Hello and welcome to the Unusual Stories podcast. My name is Wojciech Salski. I'll be your host for today. And before we begin, may I just remind you, if you find this podcast entertaining, useful, fun in any way, please follow the subscribe button. Follow the link below if you don't know where to find it. It goes a long way for the podcast, basically for myself, to grow the listener base, and the more people follow and subscribe, the more people will see it. And secondly, if you'd like to support it by promoting it online, as I always say, the word of mouth is the best kind of advertisement, so it's also for free. So if you can, either hype the post you've seen online of my work, or maybe just send a friend the link to listen, that will be amazing. And other than that, if you'd like to support the podcast in any other way, then follow the link below. There are many options, and I'm deeply grateful for, most importantly, your time and your ears, but also just for all the kind words and support and financial support, quite frankly, that I've been getting from all of you. So it means a lot, and it makes my life much more pleasant on a day-to-day to know that I'm doing something that is meaningful. So we're gonna actually touch on that today. Anyway, today I have a really, really fun episode for you. I hope I'll do a good work in expressing my thoughts on this topic, because I know how challenging it was for me when I approached these maps of meaning. But today we have the book by the man himself, yet again, the new book, Who Wrestle With God, by Jordan B. Peterson. And so I was thinking, it's not necessarily fitting in the kind of books that we've explored so far in this new year. But to be honest, some seasons I find that there is a certain theme in the topics I explore and read. And some seasons I simply come up with ideas of books that might be useful for you and entertaining, and they are quite random. And so, I was thinking, how can I tie this to our last week, which was about aliens being real? And I remember I did talk with you about this idea that the fact that aliens are real is not in any way diminishing, at least in my perception, to the idea of God and to our place in the universe in terms of us being in the image of God, let's say, or made by God, whatever God is for you. And so here we are, right? We who wrestle with God. I was thinking we'll start there. So first and foremost, in terms of the book itself, as I usually give you a little pitch on that front, I found the book pleasant. It was not as challenging as the Maps of Meaning, although I would say it is a more difficult read than 12 Rules for Life or Beyond Order, 12 Moral Rules for Life. And I guess it makes sense, in many ways, both this book, We Who Wrestle With God, and Maps of Meaning, to which I'll put the link below for you to check out if you want. These are books about more abstract and more deep concepts than the rules for life that Peterson created. And so simply out of that, I think it makes sense that these books are not as easy to read as the other two. But I found this one pleasant. I've not read the Bible yet. I am yet to explore that in more depth. So for me, this was probably one of the better aspects of this read, that thanks to Peterson's exploration of mostly Old Testament stories, I was able to explore in depth some of the ideas and concepts that I probably did hear in either some classes at school or in culture, sort of context. I probably did also hear some of them in church back when I was younger, and I did go to church with my family. But it definitely was like an exploration into the depths of it in a way that I appreciate. Like, it's not a surprise and not a secret at this point that I'm a fervent fan of Jordan Peterson's work. I appreciate that some people out there, some of you maybe even, might not find that man as entertaining and as insightful as myself. I think, it makes sense. Some people like something, some people don't. Some people resonate with what I'm saying here. Some people won't. I think if you are listening to this, then you are likely to resonate with the ideas I put in my podcast forward, because until otherwise, it is the podcast made by me, and I'm not planning to change that. But for me, it was very entertaining and insightful book. I did go through it pretty much a week after it came out. And yet again, I did show you that before, but this is how I read the book these days. If I have it in paper form, I like to highlight the parts that resonate with me, and so I can then come back to these. And I actually highlighted some with the hope of sharing it with you today, which I will. So yeah, the book itself it's a worth read. If you are familiar with the Bible, you might find this entertaining in a sense of exploring in more depth what you've already explored. If you've not, like many people, I think, ever actually picked up and read the Bible in a form other than what they offer you in church and kind of straight away explain, and then you'll find it even more useful. But yeah, as I said, at times it might seem quite clunky. There are Bible verses there that you might find just challenging to read, and that's completely fair. Maybe one thing to note, my father did start listening to this book on Audible after I suggested it to him, and for him it was too, let's say, too clunky on the Bible side. So even though he has a fervent reader as well, he found this book not as entertaining and insightful as I did, and maybe for a good reason. Ultimately, it's like 30 years of experience that he has that I don't, which probably means that what Jordan Peterson offers to a youngster like myself might not be as insightful and different to an old wolf, like my father. So who knows? Or maybe he just didn't vibe with it. Anyway, in terms of the three major themes I'd like to share with you today, some of them you might find not surprising in the context of Jordan Peterson. The first one being one of responsibility and taking on the responsibility voluntarily. So this is something that I'll try to explore, even though I would say, I can only do so much with my limited articulation ability for now. But basically, Jordan Peterson puts across this idea that at the in the essence of Christian faith is based on this idea of sacrifice, right? Jesus sacrifices himself on the cross, basically taking on the greatest challenge, death, and taking on the responsibility for all humankind through that act. So he's sort of the savior, he's representing the all of our sins sort of cleansed, right? And to me, let's park Jesus on the side for now, although I have no doubt that his avatar, power is definitely permeating all of our lives, considering, especially if you're living in the West. But in terms of that responsibility taken, there is a passage that says something like, take on the cross, take up your cross and carry it, right? And this is this invitation to voluntarily take on the responsibility, which is echoed in all of works by Jordan Peterson. And it's also one of those things that he mentions during his lectures and interviews as that one moment that gets the whole room silent, when he starts talking about taking on responsibility as a way of meaningful life. And I guess a big part of it that maybe surprises people is that it's not necessarily what your contemporary media would advertise, right? There is a lot of hedonism and kind of enjoy the ride, happy-go-lucky attitudes that are being sold to us through contemporary media, legacy media, show business and all that. But and it's very attractive in a sense that it's instant coffee, instant matching on Tinder, instant gratification, right? We always come back to this instant gratification, whereas it's not as sexy maybe as an idea if someone tells you, well, you could make your life better if you take on the responsibility for you and for it, right? And this idea of maybe even extreme ownership, like Jocko Willink proposes in his book, Extreme Ownership, which I'll probably explore in more depth in the coming weeks, since we're on the theme. There is something that I deeply resonate with in this regard, being you are responsible for yourself across time, right? We've already explored that before. Wojtek today is responsible for Wojtek today, but if I want to be a good Wojtek for Wojteks into the future, I should consider how my actions today will affect Wojtek into those years to come, right? This is potentially why I choose a healthy meal over a happy meal, over the long term, extending my life or enhancing my quality of life rather than diminishing it. It's this sort of constant juggle of the choices we make and the sacrifices we make. And so in terms of responsibility, there are a bunch of different stories from the Bible that Peterson explores and sort of points us in those different directions, showing an exemplary of how to take on responsibility or how to not be irresponsible. And if you are looking for a read that will both educate you about the Bible and what the Bible stands for, while at the same time exploring these concepts that you might have heard of either from Peterson's work or just from exploring some, short videos on YouTube of him talking to people, it's probably a good way to explore it. I found it as a cementing sort of way for empowering these ideas, right? There was not much that was completely new to me in terms of the concepts, but there was plenty to choose from in terms of the delivery and the Bible-related themes. And this brings us very swiftly to the sacrifice part. So something that I wanted to share with you, and I already kind of alluded to in the example of Christ, is this idea that in the same way that you take on responsibility for yourself and maybe for others and for yourself and others into the future, potentially even for the planet, or for the human race, in the same way, you are constantly choosing what sacrifices to make, right? So let's talk about this concept for a moment. The fact that you're listening to this podcast right now means that you've had to sacrifice all other options of either podcasts or music or TV that you would listen to, unless you're listening on one, one TV, screen TV, and one screen my podcast, and a third screen an MTV song, but that's probably not the best use of your time either. But you are sacrificing something by the choice, right? By definition, you cannot have both. You have to choose. And so in any given moment in life, you are choosing one thing or a sphere of things over others. You are choosing at all times what to do, and depending on your let's say ladder of values, a pyramid of values, your choices will be informed in different ways. So for example, if I perceive this podcast to be more valuable use of my time than playing football with friends, I will be here doing a podcast. But if I consider playing football with friends more valuable than making this podcast, I'll probably not be here. You know what I'm getting at, right? So at this moment, as I'm recording these words to you, I have sacrificed and am continuously sacrificing all the other options of how I could have used this time. And since time is the one thing we cannot get back, it is the ultimate sacrifice, maybe apart from sacrificing your life. But in a way, step by step, minute by minute, hour by hour, you are actually sacrificing your life, right? And it can be seen as an investment, depending on what you do. Maybe you are doing something that will hopefully prolong and enhance your life, and that could be considered an investment. But it could also be considered a liability. Maybe you are, eating junk food right now and drinking loads of soda, you're not moving at all, and you're scrolling through, some social media, wasting your time. And from the perspective of prolonging your time on this planet or enhancing your quality of life, you're actually probably not doing an investment, you're actually hindering yourself, and so you could consider that a liability. But you're making a sacrifice, right? If I choose to go to the gym today, I am making a sacrifice of all those other things that I could have done. Now, in the context of We Who Wrestle With God, there are plenty of stories throughout the Bible that explore this idea of proper sacrifice and improper sacrifice. So, for example, the story of Cain and Abel, right? Those two brothers. One who Abel is supposedly, he's said to be giving the right kind of sacrifice to God, and there are some qualities that go with the right sacrifice. And then there is Cain, who's his sort of jealous brother that seems to miss the mark, right, on his sacrifices. So even though he considers himself to be doing good sacrifices, God doesn't seem to agree. And the worst thing that happens, apart from Cain in the end killing Abel as a sort of the final, kind of middle finger to God, Cain actually becomes bitter and shakes his fist at God instead of reviewing his sacrifices. So this story, this parable maybe about these two brothers, is pointing us in the right direction and the wrong direction in terms of what we can do with our responsibility of right sacrifices, right? So the important point I'm trying to make here is there seems to be a way in which you can act out in life, your life in a way that makes your life better. And that's what Abel is doing. And then there is an alternative option, which could potentially be characterized through a hedonistic kind of, you only live once, YOLO attitude, which is likely to not breed the same positive results as the able. And the worst that you could do in that position is to become bitter and sort of double down on that attitude rather than check yourself, pick up the cross and bear it. So, I don't want this to be like a preachy episode on how you should conduct your life. It's completely your choice. But these are the thoughts and the ideas that really resonated with me as I explored the book. And I wanted to share with you one thing here, which is something maybe slightly more related to men. Although, considering that if you are a woman and you're likely to be looking for a man at some point, you might agree or disagree with this. And then if you do agree, then it's a probably good indicator to all the men out there how they should conduct themselves, right? So I'll read out a little part and then I'll sort of reflect on that. Women dispense with most men in their choice of partner because finding someone who optimally walks the line is very difficult, not least because it is genuinely difficult, in fact, to walk it. The eternal quandary of women. If I find the right man, he will keep away the monsters, but if I get one who is too monstrous himself, then I am in trouble. He will be a monster to me as well as to others, and that is not a good plan. I need to find someone who is half monster and half kind. And then there is and then it says, it is for this reason that the civilizable monster is arguably the prime character in both the romantic and pornographic fiction preferred by women. Best of luck locating or being him. And I just wrote in my notes here, thanks. Now, this idea of a monster, of being a monster, we've already explored before. I remember, it kind of slips my mind which episode it was about. I'll maybe try to find it. But, and I'll link it below. I'll maybe put it here. But let's for a moment just explore this part, right? So what Peterson was exploring there is this idea that women are, women choose men. It's not, men might be inclined to choose women, but in terms of how it works, in terms of, finding a partner, unless someone is, pushed sort of by force to make a choice, women are the ones selecting for men, and men select among themselves. We sort of tend to sort ourselves into a hierarchy, and women choose out of that hierarchy whoever they find fitting for them. And the difficult choice that women stand in front of is this idea that you don't want your partner to be completely useless, in a sense, like completely weak, because as a woman you're likely to approach, when you do have kids, you're likely to approach the situation in which you will rely on that partner of yours to support you. And of course, we don't necessarily have to talk only about aggression here in a physical form, but in many other ways, being a strong, a powerful human being matters in those moments of vulnerability. For example, when you have a child. And the difficulty of women choosing not weak men is that if you're choosing a man that is not weak, you have to deal with the consequence of that man being at least slightly a monster. And this is this idea that there is no virtue in being weak. Just because I cannot hurt you, it doesn't mean that I'm morally virtuous. I might just be unable to hurt you. The virtue comes from the ability of hurting and then choosing otherwise, right? So there is, this kind of line that you should have your sword with you, but have it sheathed, right? So you become a monster, a civilized monster, and so you have the potential for aggression, but you choose to not use it, and that is where virtue comes from. And I resonate with it deeply, mostly because I see it on the daily basis in terms of my friends from martial arts background, right? Those are the kindest kind of people, but they're also probably the deadliest I know. And of course, in the extreme case, you might have people that are not dealing with their aggression in the right way, and they are just dangerous. But this is the sort of walking of the line that Peterson explores in this book, that you're trying to find someone who's both civilized enough not to be aggressive towards you as a partner, but at the same time who's powerful and monster-like enough that they could defend you if need be. Obviously, assuming that a very extreme situation takes place. And there was this invitation or the challenge, like, good luck finding it or being him. Finding him or being him. And I just wrote down for myself, thanks. Because it is not an easy challenge, right? On both the side of women and men. First of all, it's a big... It's a big challenge in general for us to become attractive for others. Why should we assume that we're of any value to another until proven otherwise? And this is not to say that your life doesn't matter, not at all. Rather, unless you truly have something to offer, either in your capabilities or in your ability to project yourself into the future and produce better results going forward, the potential maybe that you could explore, why would someone care, right? And I ask myself that question nowadays, maybe slightly less so, because I already have a girlfriend and I'm really happy in that space, but and if anything, I'm still feeling like I'm growing. So I'm, reassuring myself with this idea from Tony Robbins: progress equals happiness. And maybe it's something that once you emulate it long enough, you stop bothering about it all the time. But if you are at the beginning of your journey, or if you are not in a place where you'd like to be, or maybe you're struggling to find a partner, this is something that I used to do with myself. Ask myself, is like, why would someone care about me? What makes me valuable? And not in a sense that I can sell my body. Rather, why should I be attractive to another person? What makes me attractive? And is it that I care about my looks enough, that I, groom myself, I look presentable? That might be one of the first steps, really, if you've not shaven in a while, or, if you are wearing scruffy clothes and you feel like, basically a really low-hanging person. The point here I'm trying to make is like, these are the sacrifices we make, right? So a sacrifice that I will have to make to become an attractive person for another is potentially, investing in my future, maybe learning some new skills, maybe getting a better job, maybe starting to work out or eat healthier, maybe losing some weight, whatever that is, or earning more money. This is not a discourse on what is valuable, what is not, but an invitation to consider what kind of sacrifices do you have to make for God to give you better results. And this is this Cain or Abel allegory, right? Abel was giving the right kind of sacrifices, and so he was loved in the community and was appreciated by God. And if we sort of take away the word God and put the word fate, we can say that through the right kind of attitude and effort, Abel was getting the kind of results that fate offered him because of these sacrifices. And it makes sense, right? You can observe it in real life. Like, if you know someone that has taken time over the past year or 2 or 3 to start work out more, take more care about their health, maybe gotten a better job or studied and finished uni, or maybe started reading more books or explored new ideas in a podcast and start to emulate those ways, started to practice something, you can see over time that people notice it. And this is not to say that just because you worked out, suddenly everyone is going to love you, but by making these sacrifices and investing in yourself into the future and kind of showing the world that you do care, you will attract and become more attractive to some people. And my sort of little nudge here is, I am certain that the kind of quality of a girlfriend that I have met and made and have in my life is a true representation of the kind of attractive person I have become. And this is not to boast in any way, I probably am short of the mark with many things, and I have no doubt there are many, probably everyone better than myself in many ways in the world, but that's not the point. The point is, because of certain activities that I have engaged in over the few last years, I feel I have grown as a person, and so I have become attractive to the kind of person that I met. And fair play, maybe this is complete mojo for you and it sounds kooky, but I think this is how God works, if God exists, that you kind of there is a saying from I guess Emerson, maybe, that you become what you think about most of the time, right? So whatever you sacrifice your time to, and wherever you place your energy, that part of your life will grow. And the invitation in the book We Who Wrestle With God is, consider your sacrifices and consider how can you make them better so you can reap the results, right? So shall you reap. It's the idea that whatever you plant, you will get. If you're planting good seeds, you will get good results. If you're planting bad seeds, you'll probably get bad results. Now, I'm mindful of your time, so I'll sort of maybe go to the next idea and let you mull over it later in that term. Let's talk about this part. So chaos and order, right? We've already discussed it slightly in Maps of Meaning, and I think especially if you have, and I'm impressed if you did. If you did, please send me an email saying, "Yo, Wojtek, I read Maps of Meaning," and I'm gonna say, I bow to you, my friend. Well done. I don't think it's an easy read, so well done if you did. Well, if you did read Maps of Meaning, then there is not much you can hear here that you don't already know. But the idea of chaos and order is yet again sort of explored throughout the book as obviously one of those main concepts, right? Especially in the book of Genesis, when God is said to create the world out of chaos, and basically those famous words, there was a word and word became, and so this idea that we speak world through words, and we sort of organize the world out of chaos through speech. And this is something that really resonated with me and sort of reframed in many ways the ideas offered by the Bible to begin with. And maybe this is also where we are, the sons and daughters of God. So have this as a conceptual idea. it is said in the Bible that God created man in his image, and he sort of, or them, I don't know, God gave us this power to rule over the earth, and a big part of it was to name whatever was on the earth, right? So then Adam and Eve were said to walk around the Garden of Eden and kind of point and name, this being a chicken, this being a tree, this being grass, this being sky, whatever. The idea, the conceptual idea here is this: when you encounter something new, it is by definition unknown, right? It's new, so it's not yet known, it's unknown. The moment we have a word for it, so for example, you're a young child and you go through the forest and you find a beetle, and you've not yet encountered a beetle in your life, and so you point and you ask your mom or your dad, what is it? And mom names it, that's a beetle, honey. So in that moment, in your mind, in your child's, in the child's mind, this unknown is no longer unknown. It becomes a part of the order of the world. It's a beetle. If there wasn't a name for it, it would remain in the sphere of conceptual unknown, even though you have encountered it. And of course, in terms of practical application, that might not be too much of a trouble, because it's just a beetle. But let's assume that instead of the beetle, you encounter a dragon, and you don't know how to name it, and so you don't know how to deal with it because maybe no one else ever encountered a dragon, and so you're probably the first person to meet a dragon and be eaten by the dragon, right? Until someone else hears about the story because someone saw you being eaten by a dragon, and so next time when someone encounters a dragon, someone else tells them, oh yeah, that's a dragon, watch out because you can die. And this is this idea of bringing order into chaos, bringing order out of chaos, that we make words world, right? We sort of almost like cast spells, which is this idea of spelling. Why a spelling? Because you cast a spell, and this magical maybe quality to our speech that through talking, we can not only communicate, but we can also literally bring into existence, right? So I could, in a way, I could give you a command, and when I do give you that command and you make it happen, my command became a physical thing, whatever that is. Maybe I told you to jump and you jumped, and so in a way my command was physically manifested, right? Well, that's the creative, let's say, extrovert maybe part, and then the creative from the outside to within part is speaking the world to existence in terms of organizing order out of chaos. If you remember this idea of entropy being the law of entropy states that in general the universe is constantly going towards more and more complexity, right? It's a tendency towards complexity. So in general, over time, the universe becomes more complex than less complex. It's not that more order is created unless acted upon, but rather more chaos. If we were not to clean our street for the next week, it's going to become more dirty and messy than if we are to continually clean it. It's the same as, brushing your teeth. If you are not going to brush your teeth for the next month or a year, over time there will be more entropy happening inside your mouth, and so more chaos will prevail, and probably you're gonna get cavities and you're gonna have to visit the dentist. this is the part where us being children of God might come in handy, right? Because of our creative and abstract thinking driven abilities, and most importantly free will, or at least free will within this limited exploration space, maybe, we can bring in order into the world that is innately chaotic. And of course, this doesn't mean that we completely eradicate chaos, because, if you think about it, life wouldn't be interesting at all if there was no chaos whatsoever, right? You want, at least, even if you're a very risk-averse person, you want a minimum of chaos in your life. Otherwise, you would constantly know what's coming next at all times, and so you would never be surprised, and so you would never actually, kind of get any pleasure from encountering something new. And we know that we are curious by default. Some people are more curious than others, but in general, curiosity is one of the traits that humanity just has. And so in a world that would be fully organized, there would be no space for curiosity. And that's, for me at least, that's a very bleak idea. I would probably not want that to take place. So if we think about it this way, and if we consider ourselves to be bringing order into chaos by maybe, organizing your life a little bit, cleaning your room, making a schedule, because we like those routines that we always talk about in this podcast, we can emulate these qualities that God is said to be to have granted us to begin with, and also to have done himself, to have sort of modeled for us in the book of Genesis, right? And I guess this is the part where it seems to me that in a way it's an encouraging. Yet again, as most of work by Jordan Peterson, it's an encouraging read and an encouraging topic, right? There is a lot of power, or at least a lot of potential power within you right now. Regardless of your age, really, you have many options of how to invest your time, right? Where to put your sacrifice, or what kind of sacrifice to make. Similarly, there is a lot of meaning to be found in taking on the responsibility, so you can bear the cross that you will take on for yourself voluntarily, and it doesn't have to be anything that someone tells you to do, right? I don't have to tell you what responsibility must mean for you to take responsibility. It can be taken care of a dog. It can be taken care of your family. It can be taken care of yourself or a snail. It doesn't matter. Taking on responsibility will bring you meaning in life, and making those sacrifices in the right way will reap the right results. Like similarly to the episode "Ask and You Shall Receive." I'll actually put here. I'll put a link to this episode. It's one of the earlier episodes, so if you've joined me recently, you probably have not. If you've not picked up, you've probably not explored them. But I did explore this concept before. This sort of ask and you shall receive, knock and it will be opened upon you, seek and you shall find. And it's an exploration invitation in a way. And most importantly, an encouragement to take on the adventure of life voluntarily, right? With faith and with courage. And so, in terms of that monster-like quality, we know that as we voluntarily face challenges and overcome them, we become more powerful. We grow stronger. We stand taller. we talk louder and more safe and secure, and we develop confidence that is not fake. And so, there is a certain level of confidence that you might need to fake to begin with, but I think over time, if you do take on the responsibility, if you do make the right sacrifices, and if you do make order out of chaos and watch out for those dragons and slay them rather than allow them to slay you, you will become more powerful and more attractive, and therefore, over time, you will also attract the kind of love that deserves you, and you deserve them. And I think this is a really nice way to tie it all together, in terms of the way the book goes. I wish it was longer. I feel like maybe there's going to be a second one, because there are many more parables from the Bible that I felt I kind of missed. I wish they were there. I'm definitely going to try to go and see Mr. Peterson during one of his lectures about this book going forward. But of course, I'll put the link below as well to Peterson's podcast, and that might be a way of you exploring his concepts deeper, as I do on a regular basis. It's one of those podcasts that I do listen to, because, as you might have heard or not, podcasters also listen to podcasts. Of course we do. Like, how can I know if I'm doing a good job if I don't have an ideal that I listen to and sort of strive to emulate? So yeah. In terms of the invitation for this week, as if these invitations were not big enough, I was thinking, we've just finished January, right? As you're listening to this, it's the 3rd of February, maybe. I think this is the point in the months in the year where people start to lose their power in terms of their New Year's resolutions. And as you might have heard during the podcasts before, you know what I think about resolutions. I think resolutions don't work, intentions do. And I would encourage you to continue with yours, whatever they are. I would encourage you not to lose sight of the proverbial aim, the goal, the mountain, the dragon with its gold, but to follow through with your decisions. But if you are struggling, then I would encourage you this week, I challenge you this week to have a little date with yourself, a meeting for an hour or two, when you sit down with a piece of paper or maybe with a notebook on your computer or your phone if you want, it doesn't really matter, and write down at least 5 reasons why these resolutions that you've chosen will be beneficial for you if you were to continue with them, let's say for another 3 months. After you've written down 5 reasons why they would be beneficial, write 5 reasons, or maybe write 5 things that you think will happen if you do not continue. And these don't have to be negative, remember, right? I'm giving you a full option here. So you could write 5 reasons why going to the gym is not for you. And fair play, I bet there are some reasons why it's much nicer to lie in bed and watch Netflix. The point of this exercise, though, is to help you get out of this, emotional, fast-thinking state in which you're likely to be failing with your challenges of the year for this year, because I know many people do. There is some crazy drop-off rate after 2 months in the gym membership and all that. But most importantly, hopefully it's gonna give you a chance to remind yourself, or maybe even find more reasons to continue with it. And after you've written down 5 reasons why it's beneficial for you to continue this habit for the next 3 months, I am 99.9% sure that you will be less inclined to drop off now, because you will kind of remind yourself of why did you start in the first place, and maybe you've not even thought about it so deeply before. And the problem, as we discussed before, the problem with motivation is like high intensity fuel that burns quick, while discipline and self-discipline and consistency is like this little candle that does not go off, even though, you know, it sort of slowly flickers and goes, but never stops. And I would encourage you to exchange your motivation of yesterday for a discipline and a consistency of tomorrow. And so, yeah, this is my invitation for you. And if you can make it into a format of responsibility and sacrifice, then all the better, you know. And so yeah. Of course, if you'd like to get this book and read it yourself, then follow the link below. I'll put it on there is a link, I think, to Amazon maybe. And yeah, I hope these ideas and this challenge will keep you up and going, even though the going might get hard, because sometimes it does. So yeah. Thank you so much for listening to me this week, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.